Good morning, Sachi.
I felt like I heard Takako's voice. I vaguely remembered that she disappeared about seconds ago in time for the viewer of this series in an inexplicable cutscene that ended the prior episode. I'm speaking fluent nonsense.
Meow.
I opened my eyes to see an elaborately designed ceiling.
Okay, but is it familiar?
I sat up and fixed the shoulder strap of my nightgown. The sight of the Victorian sofa and the fancy chest of drawers with the plant on top had grown familiar to me before I knew it. I felt similar to how I did when I stayed at my grandparents' place for extended amounts of time. I pulled the Featherfield sheet closer to myself and inhaled a deep breath. The scent made me think of home. Nanai left for her meeting right after breakfast. I myself returned to my room to get ready for hiking. Nanai had already prepared some sandwiches for me to eat on the road, so there was little else I had to do besides getting changed. My change of clothes were a thermal underwear, a thicker jacket, a small bag, a hat, and a pair of hiking shoes I stuffed at the bottom of my suitcase. I ended up picking them because they gave me a certain kind of look, but I wasn't entirely sure of their actual practicality. I wanted to look gorpcore.
I fucking hate that so much.
I went outside.
You can't just shop at an outdoor apparel store from New England and call it fashion. That's just what we look like during that part of the year. It's not gorpcore. It's being warm because it's fucking cold outside.
You're cool now.
No, I'm not.
I went outside as soon as I finished my preparations.
I'm glad my history of wearing hiking boots everywhere has been validated.
Yeah.
God, they used to get mad at me at my old job for wearing hiking boots, despite the fact that you had to be up and walking around the sales floor all day long. And I'm like, no, what? No.
Fucking hate that. When you work at jobs which make you be physically active and then make rules about wearing shoes appropriate for the physical activity in question.
Exactly. It's
because they don't look right, as though the customers are staring at your feet and judging you based on your shoes 24/7.
Are you daft? You want me to do so much physical labor for you each day, and I can do that labor, but you're just making it more difficult. It makes the results worse for you. This accomplishes nothing.
Much like not having seating for cashiers.
Right? It's unless your actual goal is to make people be miserable, which I'm perfectly willing to believe it is. Even the stated capitalist goal of getting more work done on lesser money, this would help that, right? Sorry, I didn't just unearth something deep and primal within me.
The sky was crystal clear, just like Nanai predicted yesterday. I took a deep breath, letting the scent of trees flood my nostrils. This time I left the mansion through the front entrance. I passed by the gates next to the parking lot and paused in front of the curving mountain road. To the left stretched the wide road that Nanai drove down to the town. To the right, the road narrowed, becoming too tight for cars to pass through. Nanai told me to follow it if I wanted to go to the mountains. I took out the hiking map for beginners that was left in the lobby and continued toward the first of the marked destinations. I checked my watch to see it was 11:30. The path for the hiking course was actually better paved than the road Nanai used to drive me to the mansion. Sorry, that threw me off. Nanai used to drive me to the mansion was how I read it.
Did you get garden pathed?
Yeah. Nice. And I was like, what do you mean used to drive you to the mansion?
Nice.
It was surprisingly flat, too. I had to climb a few stairs here and there, but there were no steep slopes like I'd been expecting. The song of birds echoed across the area. Whenever their chirping became somewhat louder, I'd pause and look for them in the tree branches or among the rocks. Thus far, I'd discovered a Darian redstart, a pale thrush, and a brown-eared bulbul. All of them were in the bird encyclopedia Kozue found for me. This mountain seemed to have a surprising number of birds, just like Nanai said. The scenery peeking through the thick woods was the same one I saw when Nanai drove me up to the mansion. A range of mountains and the sea, clearly visible in the distance. Besides that, I only spotted a moss-covered old temple, a relatively high waterfall hidden by the surrounding trees, a shallow river running between the rocks, and a small, ancient-looking dam.
What do you mean only? Like, why are we glossing over the cool temple? What?
I'd spend some time looking at each new thing I discovered, and when I found none, I'd instead look for birds. I reached my destination, the observation platform, by 12 o'clock. As I climbed up to it, the scenery of the southern sea extended before me in the distance. The land here curved from the east and continued to the other end of the sea. The green lands and the azure sea seemed almost like they went on forever, all the way to the very edge of the world, under the already boundless blue sky. I sat down on the bench I found on the platform, placing my bag by my feet. I had a quick sip from the water bottle I kept in the bag's side pocket, then took out my sandwiches and began munching away on them. There was not a soul around. It might have been too early for the New Year's season, or perhaps the place was always this deserted. I honestly couldn't tell, but the fact remained that the area was completely deserted. I turned around and looked at the way I came from, but I saw no traces of anyone having ascended the path behind me. I listened to the chirping of birds as I ate. Do you ever just zone out and realize you're still talking?
Yeah. Actually, like, one of the dirty little secrets about the show sometimes is that when we get in, like, the part where it's just like, okay, we're reciting dialogue for a long time, sometimes I will actually just, like, zone out, but I'll still be, like, actually talking and emoting and everything, but then I'll come back and be like, oh, whoop, I'm back.
I realized that for the past, like, full minute or so, my brain had wandered off into another dimension and was thinking about other things, and I snapped back to this scene and was like, wait, what's happening? Wait, I've been reading it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I listened to the chirping of birds as I ate. A bird landed on one of the tree branches above me. It was a species I'd already spotted before.
Turns out it's very difficult to be, like, mentally present for, like, a full couple-hour session, right?
Clip that. Turns out it's very difficult to be mentally present.
That's true. That's just true.
It was fun to find birds hidden in the scenery. I couldn't recognize most of them, but I could knock my microphone so that it turned at an odd angle and made my voice really quiet for a second.
Yeah, thank you for that.
But whenever I found one I did, it made me happy. Birdwatching might have been a much more fun hobby than I thought. I wondered if I could make out the birds better if I had one of those binoculars. Sachiko becoming a feathery. I wonder if I could make out with the birds better.
Ow, their beaks are hard. Ow.
And if I memorized the voices described in the book, I could probably spot and recognize way more species than I did now. I went hiking today just because I figured it'd probably be a waste not to. But it ended up being much more fun than I expected. I had no companions to talk to, so I had no choice but to entertain myself solely by observing nature, looking for more animals or interesting trees. Takako would have probably spotted a lot more things than I did, but that only meant I had more things to look forward to in the future. I inhaled a breath and
I did spot one thing. Pretty cute ass right over there.
I inhaled a breath and rose to my feet, my body feeling somewhat heavy.
No, nothing?
It was about time to start heading home.
You're just ignoring me on purpose.
The map's recommended route was not the same road I used to come here. Instead, it led around the mountain, emerging near the back of the library. I could feel the cool breeze on my skin. I descended the gentle slope, fighting against gravity's attempts to hasten my step. I crossed the river, careful of the moss-covered, slippery-looking stones. After a few more minutes on the path, I emerged onto a wide road. I paused there for a moment. As I took out the map from my bag to confirm the direction I should continue in, I spotted a girl walking toward me from one end of the road. It was Kozue. Hello? Hello. Are you going to the library? I asked. Kozue nodded and asked if I was planning to go somewhere. I answered that I was actually on my way back. She gave me an apprehensive look. As I was trying to understand what it meant, she passed by me. I put the map back in the bag and followed her. Do you know a lake that should be somewhere around here? It's that way. Kozue pointed at the woods. Looking in the direction she pointed in, I couldn't see anything other than the trees. There's a road further down. I'll show you.
Yeah, Kozue was just going back and forth between the two halves, doing her research in the future version of the mansion so she could figure out stuff about the past version. Oh, that's delightful.
That's really good.
That's really delightful. So, like, are we assuming then that what we're seeing then are just the three different perspectives of one person whose senses have turned inward?
That's, I think, our best theory so far.
I think that's, and I think we still think that person is Takako. At least at least I do, but
I followed the path that Kozue showed me. After only a few dozen meters, I could make out a body of water through the tree branches. The lake stretched much wider than I had thought, its surface still as a mirror. I sat down on a half-withered tree I found lying on the small, sandy beach. It turned out to be sturdier than it looked. It didn't seem like I had to worry about it crashing down under my weight. I shifted my gaze back to the lake, observing the black, hummus-covered slope.
Om nom nom. Tasty.
Observing the black, humus-covered slope come in contact with the water, as well as another fallen tree with its roots sticking out next to it. It didn't seem like the lake had received any artificial treatment. The area I'd been sitting at was the closest I could get to the water without the risk of falling in. The water was so clear I could see the sand at the lake's bottom. At some areas, it seemed like the surrounding vegetation had also invaded the lake itself, covering parts of its bottom in green. Watching the lake reminded me of that one time Takako invited me to go fishing. We were still in middle school. Takako, me, and two of her good friends at the time left our houses on our bicycles. Our destination was the lake that Takako's family used to visit by car all the time. She was the only one who knew the location. Takako said it only took 20 minutes by car, but being 2 mountains and 1 river away, the place wasn't exactly easy to reach for a bunch of children. In truth, Takako's 2 friends gave up after seeing the slope leading over the first mountain. I would have left myself, but I knew Takako would not give up and try to press on, with or without us. It would have been bad if she got lost, so I followed her while making sure to remember the way.
You think I'm gonna let some mountain defeat me?
Memorizing the unusual roofs of the houses across the mountains, I was thinking that I'd have Takako turn back around noon, even if by force. However, by noon, we had already reached the lake. Takako was overjoyed by having reached the place from her memories. That told me how little of the way she actually remembered. I looked at the lake currently in front of my eyes. The lake we found with Takako didn't have a wooden pier or a proper path leading to it. It was as wild as the forest around it. It also had a big tree leaning right over the water. Takako had the bright idea to do her fishing from atop that very tree. Meanwhile, I laid down a sheet on the sandy beach by the lake, just like this one, and ate a jam sandwich while observing her. It was a pleasant, silent place. We spent about 2 hours at that lake. I read a book I'd brought while Takako attempted to fish. Big fish would sometimes jump above the water, causing ripples to spread along the lake's surface. Though we didn't catch anything in the end, Takako was satisfied by the experience. I couldn't remember the way back all that well, but by the time we got back, it was already dark outside. Needless to say, my parents were furious. When we left the lake, Takako suggested we come back another day. I did give her a half-hearted reply of sorts, but I wasn't really planning on ever coming back. As such, that was the first and last time we went to that lake. I felt a bit sad, so I took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. That was but another little episode from my past. The chilly air filled my lungs, soothing my aching heart. Now that I thought about it, that might have been the farthest trip I had ever taken on a bicycle. And I'd forgotten all about it until now. I tried remembering my childhood. Fishing, hot springs, amusement parks, zoos, aquariums, zoo-aquariums. Takako forced me to accompany her to a whole variety of places. As I remembered the lake from my past, it felt like it began overlapping with the one I was staring at now. Before I knew it, I couldn't tell which detail was supposed to belong to which scenery. I quickly snapped out of that state, realizing I'd been breathing heavily. It probably would have been wise to stay away from those memories until I calmed down, but they started swirling around me like a ship that had lost its rudder. I soon gave up on resisting and instead decided to take an objective look at them. First, I asked myself whether this lake was part of the real world. All lakes look the same anyway, I answered myself. That was probably more or less true. When you start thinking about it too much, the resemblance becomes all the more striking. Or perhaps my memories were actually being overwritten by this scenery. You've never been here before. In any case, this wasn't that lake, and I had no way of returning to the past.
Huh. The slow encroachment of awareness as, oh hey, welcome back.
I ran into Lily in the lobby. Hello.
I hear you were out hiking. How far did you go?
I followed the route on your map up to Sakuradai.
Oh, Sakuradai. The scenery is quite striking there, especially during good weather. It was nice, wasn't it?
I could see beyond the gulf from the observation platform. I had lunch there, then circled around the mountain to come back.
I see. Nana has only just returned too. I think she's preparing some dinner tonight, right now.
I see.
What was with that little flash while it did that?
I know, right?
I think that was just a UI bug, but still.
Suddenly,
right as she does the
contact.
fucking yandere eye.
Yeah!
Oh, that's right. I brought Kozue to the architectural office the other day. Everyone really liked her. At first she was quiet as a mouse, but once we began talking about the mansion, she suddenly started asking more and more questions until even the guys at the office started to run out of answers. In the end, they told us to come visit again anytime.
I'm glad to hear that. Kozue said she was worried about bothering everyone with her curiosity.
I see. I'm the one who invited her, so there really was no need for her to worry. I think she's already considering these things at her age. Oh, what a nice girl. She might come off as a bit shy at first, but once you talk to her, you realize she can be surprisingly assertive. She's cute as a button to boot. Wish Nana was more like her when she was a child.
I imagine Nanai was quite active in her younger years.
Indeed she was. At Kozue's age, she was still running around the mountains looking for insects.
Yes, she didn't seem like the kind of girl who'd be afraid of bugs. I imagined Nanai chasing after insects and fishing in the mountains, which in turn made me remember Takako.
Yeah. Oh, will you look at the time?
Said Lily as she glanced at the clock.
Tell the truth, I still haven't finished some of my duties yet. I'm going to discuss Nana's childhood some other time.
Okay.
See you later then. Why is she insisting on calling her Nana now instead of Nanai? Even when Sachiko was said Nanai.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a typo the first time, but it's the third time now.
Mm-hmm. See you. After that, I climbed the stairs and returned to my room. I undressed, took a shower, and changed into something more comfortable. I glanced out the window while drying my hair at the dresser and saw the evening sun beginning to gradually shower the mountain range with its crimson rays.
Crimson Ray! Pew, 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 pew.
After lightly combing my hair, I descended to the lobby. The grandfather clock had just struck 5 o'clock. I considered going to the kitchen to look for Nanai, but then realized I would probably be getting in the way of her cooking. So I changed my mind. I shifted my eyes to the corner of the lobby, remembering the reading area Nanai and I designed together. Now that I looked at it, I got worried whether a chair would actually fit there. Curious about the overall design of the room, I sat down on one of the stools by the wall and began to slowly scrutinize my surroundings. I could hear the grandfather clock creak with each new swing of its pendulum. That old thing must have been a pain to maintain. A main pain, if you will. A jug with a forest plant in it rested on the counter. A black phone slumbered all alone on a stool in the corner. I felt like Nanai had nothing to worry about concerning the lobby coming off as dull. By the time the orange rays of the sun penetrated the stained glass on the door, I started to regret not bringing a book with me. Being left with no other options, I spent some time observing the patches of sunlight as they slowly traveled from the center of the lobby to the camellia, then to the old register on the counter. I suddenly remembered how I met Nanai in Rome. She said she was looking for new furniture. Even this room alone had an expensive-looking glass shelf on the other end of the counter, an old decorative typewriter, and some seemingly antique stools, not to mention all the other things I'd already mentioned. I wondered how much of those Nanai collected by herself. At a closer look, I realized that the items all seemed to date back to a wide variety of periods and came from all sorts of regions. However, they were now all a part of the world Nanai created. A place filled with the soothing, nostalgic atmosphere that reminded me of the Western fairy tales I used to read as a child, as I missed the call. I figured I should ask her about what her buying standards were. A continuous ringing sound shook me awake from my daydream.
But also creating a world based off of all parts from her, Yeah.
It appeared to be the phone. It continued to ring as I gazed at it. It didn't seem like Lily or anyone was coming back to pick it up. I stood up and walked in front of the phone. I picked up the receiver. Hello?
Is your refrigerator running? Well, then you better catch it.
Hello?
Hello.
The voice from the other end of the line sounded kind of nostalgic. I instantly recognized it as Narasaki's.
That's Sachiko.
I'm sorry, I made you promise to call, but I ended up forgetting about it.
Don't worry about it. I wasn't sure if I'd have time to call anyway.
Did you manage to get back all right?
Yep,
She said. One of her usual snorts followed. Suddenly, I heard the gong of the grandfather clock.
Is something wrong?
Narasaki asked as the sound startled me. No, the clock just surprised me, that's all. Hearing me say that, Narasaki let out another chuckle. The clock continued to gong. I felt like I could hear it from the other end of the line, too.
Do you like flowers, Sachiko?
Flowers?
Yes, flowers.
Well, I suppose I do. Not much more than the average person, though.
In that case, maybe you should try growing a garden as a hobby.
Why? That sounds pretty random coming from you.
Taking care of living things does wonders for relaxation. I'd recommend keeping a pet, but you're allergic to fur, if I remember correctly. I just thought it would fit you.
Really? Well, I'll think about it. How is your schedule looking? When do you think I should drop by your clinic again? Narasaki didn't say anything, so I brought up the subject myself. However, she didn't answer right away, instead making a long pause.
I don't think we'll be able to meet for a while.
Why?
I got a sudden new job. I'll have to travel a bit far for a while.
What do you mean far? Where are you going? And what's going to happen to your clinic?
The location isn't clear yet. As for the clinic, I'll be closing it.
That's sudden,
I'm sorry, but I will be busy for a while.
Narasaki said after I fell silent. She explained that we would not be meeting for a long while. I was even planning to buy her a present on my way back, but now I felt a little dejected by this sudden turn of events.
Hey, these things happen, you know.
Narasaki added as I absent-mindedly coiled the phone's cord around my finger. If I started but gave up. It's going to be lonely without you, I said instead.
You can always call Nanai or Lily if you need company.
I suppose so. Calling Nanai from time to time did sound like a pretty good idea. But I also felt like Narasaki's departure would leave a gaping hole in my life.
If you still feel lonely, just blame it on the season. It's all too easy to get caught up in a melancholy mood when it's cold and silent outside. Your apartment has a balcony, correct? Try growing primroses. They're strikingly colorful things that can actually bloom in winter.
I'll give that a try, if I feel like it.
Good. Well, then I'll be hanging up. There's still something I need to take care of.
I see.
What's wrong? Is there still something you want to tell me?
I was already prepared to hear her say goodbye, but she didn't end the conversation just yet. What makes you think that? I pulled my finger away from the cord, letting it stretch back to its normal length.
Whenever you left your grandparents' house in the country, you'd always keep waving at them from the rear window of the car until they were completely out of sight. That is the kind of child that you were.
I'm not a child anymore.
You really think so?
Narasaki said. I'm hanging up.
All right.
See you.
See you.
I pulled the receiver away from my ear and placed it on the phone. I heaved a deep breath as I let go of it and stole a glance at the clock. Its minute arrow was pointing at the number 2. That wasn't a very long conversation.
Long-versation.
That wasn't a very long versation. The pieces of the stained glass on the door glowed in navy blue. As I considered going back to my room to wait for dinner, I suddenly felt kind of tired and didn't want to climb the staircase.
I noticed that they keep describing the windows as stained glass, and Takako had a penchant for collecting colored sea glass.
Oh yeah, the glass beads.
Yeah. Just seeing it through her eyes. Almost.
I sat down on the same stool as before and waited for my sudden exhaustion to pass. I glanced at the phone, but remembering Narasaki's last words, quickly looked away. Placing my elbows on my knees, I rested my forehead on my palms. I closed my eyes, listening to the pendulum swing back and forth.
The pendulum swing.
What?
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
I opened my eyes to see the already familiar canopy above the bed.
The pendulum swing like Narasaki hypnotizing.
I promptly sat up and slid out from under the sheets as I always did. Then I got changed and headed off to have breakfast. As I reached the cafeteria, I found Nanai with my breakfast at the usual table. I greeted her and we began eating together. The meal consisted of bread rolls, scrambled eggs, spaghetti, spinach salad, sausages, and a handful of cherry tomatoes.
Damn. You know, like, I don't eat the meat part of it, but that still sounds like a really, great breakfast.
Spaghetti-fist.
Spaghetti-fist. Spaghetti about it. My new Italian mob film.
This looks even more extravagant than usual.
Oh, right, I'm Nanai.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a moment there to, just... Oh, yep, there go the gears. It's your last breakfast here, so I felt like putting in a bit of extra effort. You can leave some if it's too much.
The rolled bread had soft ham and crispy cheese inside. After finishing the bread, I scooped up a mouthful of spaghetti with my fork. This is pretty nostalgic. I remembered having something similar back in school, though it wasn't this good.
Right, I liked them so much I ended up looking up the recipe.
Those noodles look kind of unusual. Do they even sell those in a supermarket?
They're called soft noodles. You can get them directly from the manufacturers if you order a large amount.
I see.
Apparently they're specially made for school lunches. They don't get as mushy as the normal ones and are supposedly better for digestion.
Does Nanai have a snaggletooth? Am I seeing that right, or is that just my glasses?
I see it too, but it's like a flesh snaggletooth. That might just be an artifact of the artwork.
Okay. Yeah, I remember how easily they'd tear just from a gentle touch of your chopsticks.
Exactly. Oh, is this Nanai still explaining?
I think
I
so.
realized this after looking it up, but apparently Japanese school lunches, after the war, you mostly used bread imported from America. The noodle industry eventually caught wind of it and decided to increase the variety of food available in schools, developing these noodles as a result. They're especially rich in the B1 and B2 vitamins that children desperately needed back in those days. It all started in Tokyo before gradually spreading all across the country.
I never would have guessed that these spaghetti had such a rich history.
You won't forget the spaghetti.
We spent the rest of our lunch discussing the kind of food we used to eat at school. Apparently, Nanai was a big fan of mackerel miso soup. When I mentioned I liked to make sushi rolls, she taught me a few tricks to make the process easier and the results neater.
The trick is to tuck in your entire body so there's less, extremities to bring around as you're doing the flip. That's how you do a barrel roll. What were we talking about?
I spent the afternoon in the mansion like I always did. After packing my bags, I made it down to the lobby. Nanai promised she'd meet me with her car, but I arrived a bit earlier than the agreed upon time. I placed my bags under the counter and lingered in the lobby for a while. I was thinking about sitting down on the stool when the black phone entered my vision. It didn't seem like it would be ringing again anytime soon.
Is something wrong? Did my phone offend you in some way?
Nanai appeared in the doorway behind the counter.
I mean, I'd believe it. It's a very offensive phone.
Checking the clock, I realized it was about time for my departure. No, it's nothing.
I see. Well, let's be on our way, I suppose.
Right.
How did you like it here?
Nanai asked me as we rattled down the same road I ascended on my first day here. I had a great time. It's been so long since I felt so relaxed. I'm almost looking forward to going back to work the day after tomorrow.
I'm glad to hear it.
The car rattled as it passed over a big hole on the road, making Nanai grow silent. I caught a glimpse of the sea beyond the trees around us.
Feel free to drop by for another visit if you're ever in the mood.
Oh, definitely. Nanai told me she still had some unfinished work to attend to as we parted ways at the station. After waiting a minute or so for me to go inside, she drove away. I found a small shop inside the station. I wonder what kind of shop this is. I briefly inspected its lineup. It had some snacks, newspapers, and a souvenir corner. Key holders, wood carvings, and glass sculptures lined a long shelf. I found a familiar writing utensil among the lineup, clips with cute bears on them. I felt like I had too few to put them to any real use, so I considered buying a bit more here. But as I wondered if it was really necessary, I grew worried about the time. I checked the clock inside the station and realized it was about time for my train. In the end, I bought 2 packs of clippings, thinking I might as well give the extra ones to my definitely real workmates as presents. Then I bought a few more things I thought they might like. I bought the ticket at the booth Nanai told me about, and as soon as I stepped onto the platform, the train arrived.
So... Oh, that's a really... Look at how her hair turns kind of red and orangish in the
Yeah.
in the light, like making her look almost like Narasaki's colors. Or actually, from this angle, she looks more like Kurisu, doesn't she? Looks like she's about to take out a time machine or something.
The train car rocked back and forth. I let out a sigh, then inhaled a breath. realizing that the air here smelled a lot like the way it does back home in the countryside. A complex mix of steel, trees, the sea, old buildings, and incense. The scent waned with each station we passed. Instead, the towns began to grow bigger and bigger. After the next station, we emerged next to a highway along the sea. I watched the sun set along the sea, illuminating the train car in its orange glow. It sank deeper and deeper into the western horizon. I closed my eyes, turning my face to the center of the light. I imagined a world where the sun rose from the west. Takako was sleeping there on the other side. The faint sun rays would soon fall on her closed eyelids, gently waking her. She would then do her usual routine of radio exercises and head to work. That silly train of thought was enough to make me feel like I would be okay. Opening my eyes, I saw the entire train car painted in orange. It felt almost like I was in a pleasantly warm bath. I truly managed to put my vacation time to good use this time. The hallucinations and ear-ringing that had been plaguing me for quite a while seemed to have completely disappeared over the past few days, which were exactly as they appeared.
Completely disappeared.
I felt like I could return to work in top shape, but I also wasn't planning to take on as much as I used to near the end of the year. I shoved my right hand into the pocket of my jacket to confirm my ticket when my fingers touched something cold and hard inside. I took it out and realized it was the penguin toy Kozue gave me as a present. It shone dully in the orange light, its silly face looking somewhat sad. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. Wondering if a stray sun ray reflected on some nearby surface had hurt my eye, I slightly rubbed it. When I did, another tear spilled forth from it. I paused for a moment, unable to understand what was causing this. No other tears followed, with the second one remaining moist on my cheek. The exact same scenery I'd observed on my way here drifted along on the other end of the window. But I felt like I myself was now somehow different. Something didn't add up. It was like I left something behind in that mansion. I could recall someone telling me I had nothing to worry about anymore, but I couldn't remember who it was or when it happened. And I had a feeling I'd never be able to. I touched the trail left by the teardrop on my cheek, feeling a pain in my heart every time the train car swayed. It was like something important was being peeled away from it, little by little. However, I had no way of escaping the moving train. All I could do was sit here, waiting for it to reach its final destination. I felt like I could hear a faint voice in the corner of my mind, but I couldn't make it out. A deep darkness enveloped everything.
What a strange game this is.
Holy shit!
Holy shit, is this actually going to be the final?
These chapters are getting really short.
Yeah! Holy, okay. Returned to the night duty room after my conversation with Narasaki. I picked up our teacups and pot from the table and carried them to the kitchen. I spilled what little tea was left on the bottom of the pot into the sink, and realized I was out of boiled water to make more. I pulled a kettle off one of the shelves, filled it with water, and put it on the stove. I mulled over my conversation with Narasaki while waiting for the water to boil. The conversation hardly took an hour, but I learned a lot. My head was still spinning, having received all this information about the diaries and illness and whatnot. Now that I thought about it, I should have used that chance to ask Narasaki more questions. For example, she said that she had met me before in the past. I forgot to ask even when that happened. Besides, while Narasaki seemed amiable and answered more or less everything I asked, it felt like there was still something off about how she phrased certain things. I wonder if she really didn't know Sachiko like she tried to imply. She didn't seem at all surprised or even curious when I told her Sachiko was the most important person in my life, almost as though she knew about our relationship. The hiss of the kettle brought me back to reality. I poured the boiling water into the pot and filled with old tea leaves. I filled my teacup with the freshly made tea and took a sip, feeling my head clear up. I grabbed one of the monaka that Narasaki had brought me and returned to the living room, sitting down on the cushion by the table. A bunch of keys Narasaki handed me lay on the middle of the table. They were all connected by a silver ring. Some of the keys had small green hexagonal key holders attached to them. Being all the same, they reminded me of the keys used in hotels. They were different from the key holders Mayuko used. Picked one key holder up to realize it was a bit heavier than I had thought. It sparkled slightly, reflecting the light as I turned it in my palm. I suddenly spotted a number on it. Upon turning it a bit more in the light, I could make out a room number.
208?
I tried checking which room keys I had and eventually found one to Kozue's old room. I placed the keys back on the table. I remembered how I saw Sachiko in that room. I tried to get back to that room multiple times, but it was always locked. I didn't realize it until now, but the tea I drank seemed more bitter than usual. I now have the chance to check that room before returning the keys to Mayuko. For some reason, I felt like it wasn't complete coincidence that they ended up in my possession. I tried coming up with an explanation, but ultimately failed. I wonder whether I should go to that room right now or instead tell Narasaki about what I experienced there. However, I couldn't exactly figure out what I was supposed to ask her. I was the only one who knew what happened there. Narasaki might have understood something I didn't had I told her everything. On the other hand, she might have just deemed me crazy and locked me up or something. Besides, based on our previous conversation, it was already evident that she was trying to avoid discussing Sachiko with me. There were no guarantees she'd tell me anything, even if she knew. Gulped down the remainder of my drink and picked up the keys. Moved the one with Kozue's old room number on it, shoved it into my pocket. It's entirely possible that nothing would happen, even if I went there. However, I couldn't help but feel like there was something important in that room. I made sure to slide a flashlight into my back pocket before leaving the night duty room. I ran into Sanai near the spiral staircase in the lobby.
I was looking for you,
Said Sanai as she approached me. She told me she was just on her way to the night duty room after finding my room empty.
What's up? I'm not working today.
You told me you wanted me to recommend you some
I
books.
glanced at the cover of the book she was holding. It had an illustration depicting a sci-fi cityscape with a semi-futuristic look. I remembered seeing Sanai read that book before.
I saw you reading that one.
It's a mystery novel with lots of action elements. I think you'd enjoy it. The mystery itself is pretty good, too.
She added.
That sounds fun, but I'm a bit busy right now. I'll swing by your room to pick it up later, all right?
Fine by me.
Isn't that SeaBed that she has there?
No, it's William Gibson's Neuromancer.
Oh, that makes sense.
Sanai nodded and returned to her room.
Molly Millions is pretty hot, am I right?
Yeah.
She was in that one, right? She's in
All of them, yeah.
Of the Gibson cyberpunks. Yeah, okay, yeah. Who wore it better, Molly Millions or Jensen? The answer is Molly Millions. We all know that's the case. Continued down the corridor in the opposite direction, slowing my steps so Sanai wouldn't see me stop in front of the locked room. I waited for her to turn a corner. I took a glance over my shoulder. Sanai was nowhere to be seen. I quickly surveyed the rest of my surroundings, making absolutely sure there wasn't anyone on the opposite end of the corridor either. Then took the key out of my pocket and stuck it into the lock. On second thought, I didn't necessarily have to hide this from Sanai. She wouldn't tell Mayuko about it if I asked her to keep it a secret. Besides, all she would have likely done was warn me to be careful. I doubted she would have tried to stop me. Still, I didn't want to force her to lie for me, so perhaps this was for the best. I turned the key with a click, and the lock opened. The handle no longer resisted me. I considered what I would do if I ended up being unable to return. I remembered promising Mayuko to tell her before going somewhere, but it was already after I had entered the room and closed the door behind me.
Time for a locked room mystery.
Who killed me?
There was nothing but a bed and an empty shelf in the room, just like the day I went to look for that thing that Kozue lost. The place even felt kind of nostalgic. Now that I thought about it, I never even learned what I was looking for in here. The evening light filtered in through the window, preventing the room from being as dark as last time. I wondered if I should have opened the window, but since I didn't come here to clean or do anything of the sort, I Figured I'd leave it alone for now. I walked to the center of the room, then spun around. The place looked like a normal room. There were no caves or any other trippy imagery I witnessed last time. When I leaned against the shelf, my hand ended up covered in dust. I pulled my hand back, realizing I'd left a handprint. I considered sleeping on the bed, but that was probably a bad idea. Placing my hand back on the same spot, I closed my eyes. And with that, I remembered everything that happened here last time. A tiny sliver of light surrounded by a boundless darkness. When I moved closer to it, I saw Sachiko's back. She was sitting on a stone facing away from me. When I tried speaking to her, she noticed my voice and slightly turned around. And that was where it ended. I replayed it in my mind countless times, so I was absolutely certain. When I opened my eyes, the room had been swallowed by darkness. Surprised, I took a step back, hitting the shelf behind me with my buttocks. The flashlight I brought with me slid out of my pocket and fell to the ground. I instantly turned around to pick it up, but I couldn't see anything in the blinding dark. This sudden turn of events left me a little dizzy. Realizing I wouldn't be able to rely on my eyes anymore, I tried to ascertain my surroundings using my other senses. The scents and sounds I detected told me I was back in that place. I tried grasping around for the flashlight, but I had no idea where it fell anymore. I could no longer even find that shelf I hid earlier. In fact, I didn't even hear the sound of the flashlight hitting the floor. Perhaps I had left it on the other side. Surrounded by the hollow darkness, I let out a sigh. I swiftly calmed myself, focusing instead on what I was to do next. I came here to find Sachiko. I wanted to know what the present Sachiko, whom I still couldn't completely remember, was doing and where she was. I slowly took another look around. This definitely wasn't the best of situations, but for some reason, I didn't panic. Oddly enough, this darkness felt more nostalgic than intimidating. The last time I was here, I was too surprised to be able to think straight, but now it felt like my head was working even better than usual. Perhaps the thought I might find Sachiko here made it that way. Whenever I was by her side, I'd feel neither fear nor anxiety. I heard a gust of wind blow past me. It reminded me of the sound of fast-moving subway trains. Additionally, the cool and musty smell reminded me of the floor of my old apartment. When I was little, I used to dig deep down into the sandbox to find the driest and smoothest sand to use as topping for my sand pancakes. Sandcakes, if you will. A few times I managed to find that sand had turned light green. I still had no idea what that was supposed to be. In any case, I stored my greenish pancakes in an empty water tank I found in a warehouse. It was always dry and cold inside, so it was perfect for storage. A few times I left my pancakes under the stairs of my apartment. I found them cracked, looking as though a dog or a cat had stepped on them. Those I stored in the tank probably survived until I moved. For some reason, I couldn't remember that clearly. I only remembered how I stored them in the tank. I checked to see if my limbs were still numb, then decided to move forward. Much like last time, the ground at my feet had a hard, rocky texture to it. Careful not to trip, I slowly continued forward. The distorted... What?
It had a rocky texture to it. It's the eye of the tiger, it's the will of the fight.
Really? That's how we're doing this? All right. The distorted echoes of my footsteps reverberated across the darkness. I continued walking for a while, but hit no walls nor any other barriers. This was definitely not the inside of that room anymore. I was back. I blinked, but it didn't help. With or without my eyes closed, everything still remained the same. Perhaps this whole thing was just in my head and my eyes had nothing to do with it. There was something off with my footsteps, so I paused for a bit. My last step reverberated across the sea area. It grew around. Its sound grew gradually quieter until it eventually disappeared. But the sound of my next footstep reached me from behind. I turned around, but I still couldn't see anything. Nonetheless, I could hear rhythmic footsteps approaching me from that very direction. I rubbed my eyes and felt like I spotted a white stain of sorts in the darkness. I focused my eyes on it and rubbed them again. The white stain began to grow bigger and bigger with each footstep I heard. It was a white shadow. Stretching tall from the ground, it had the shape of a person. It was coming toward me. I stood in place for a few moments, until the shadow came close enough for me to reach it. It stopped right in front of me. Yet I still couldn't figure out what it was supposed to be. It had blurry contours and no colors. It really was just a white shadow. Sachiko's shadow. It swayed from left to right. I could have sworn it was crying, and suddenly it reached out and covered my eyes.
What the fuck?
After blinking a few times, I looked around. I was back in a room. Before I knew it, I stood there in the middle, staring at the door. For a moment, I thought I was back, but this wasn't the same room I came from.
This is the room from the tips.
Yep. I looked around while rubbing my arms. It was incredibly cold. I wore a coat over a long-sleeved shirt, choice of apparel that would keep me warm during the winter. Yet the air in this room felt like it could penetrate right through its layers, chilling my skin. The room was about the same size as Kozoue's, but the interior was different. The bed actually had a canopy with a curtain. The curtain was closed, making it impossible to see inside. Took a few footsteps to see if causing any sounds would change anything. The dry sound of my footsteps reverberated across the room, but that was about it. I couldn't feel anyone's presence. It was as still as death. Only a faint reddish light illuminated the interior. I stuck my hands in the gap between the curtains and slowly pulled them away. There was no one on the bed, much like I had expected. The curtains completely surrounded the entire bed, blocking the view of its sides. Barely make out the lamp and a silhouette of a clock on one side. I had to circle around the bed to check either of its sides. I inspected the room's interior one more time as I walked around. There was a Dracaena plant in a pot by the door. An oil painting of some landscape hung on the wall to the right of it. Underneath it rested an antique-looking dresser. It was well organized and neatly maintained. Feeling like I'd seen some of these things before, I turned my gaze to the painting. Either the scenery or the painting itself, but I could remember neither of what it was of, nor the painter who could have painted such a thing. I walked closer to have a better look, but that didn't help. Perhaps I never really knew this thing to begin with. My hand touched the dresser, I instinctively pulled it back. But then I realized I had no reason to be afraid, and I leaned against the desk. It did not have a single speck of dust on it. Whoever used it must have been a clean freak. The dresser had cute bent legs. I spotted an odd dent on one of them, with a bit of the wood chipped away. It was around the height you'd stub your toe at. Just looking at it made my toe ache. Relaxed by such a silly thought, I turned around and stopped again. I wonder how I knew that the shape on the other side of the bed was a clock. Its silhouette was so blurred I couldn't have possibly figured out what it was based just on that, and yet I still knew it was a clock. It was a rectangle-shaped thing, with a little roof on top. It had a round clock board on the top, with a pendulum swinging underneath it. A little dwarf used to come out of it to play a melody whenever the clock struck the hour, but one of its springs had gone bad, and now it no longer worked. I listened to the swinging pendulum while gazing at the vague contours of the clock. I followed it to the other side of the bed. The sound that I thought was just my imagination turned more and more real with each step. A side table stood by the bed. The clock I'd just described rested atop it. I felt my head grow hot when I confirmed it really was the same thing. It wasn't just the clock that I was familiar with. I knew that side table. I knew that lamp. I knew that dresser. I knew that painting. This was the bedroom of the apartment I shared with Sachiko. It was as though the memories frozen in the back of my mind began to melt. The pendulum sound went through them like an ice pick. The curtains around the bed moved, a slight gap opening between them. White steam rose from it. As I looked at that, I realized my fingertips had grown cold.
What's that? That isn't smoke. That's steam. Steam from the steamed hams we're having, Takako.
Wow, steamed hams.
The room's temperature had fallen so low that my breath was starting to turn white. I stuck my frozen hands on the gap between the curtains and slowly pulled them to myself. Someone was now on the previously empty bed. It lay on its sheets in a beautiful posture. It had the same face as me, but its skin was pale as snow.
Huh. So is this the thing being described with this illness happened? Takako did eventually lose all of her memories all of a sudden to the point where she no longer even remembered who she was.
Mm-hmm.
And this has all been her experiences from the perspective of a person who can't even remember who she is, as these various disintegrated parts of herself are kind of struggling to reintegrate and figure out, hey, here's how you go back to remembering who you are.
I think it might be something like that, yeah. Oh, that was not her. That's someone else's voice.
Thinking?
I felt like I heard someone's voice. The lifeless lips of the me lying on the bed remained closed. I strained my ears and indeed heard something again. It sounded akin to someone talking to themselves. The voice I heard in between the rhythmic sound of the pendulum was likely the same one I'd listened to during most of my life. Unsure of its source, I continued looking at myself on the bed for a while. That faint voice definitely originated in this room. Focused all my attention on it, careful not to disturb it with any stray thoughts. Almost like an archaeologist digging out of a brittle antique. And eventually I started to make out the words of that familiar voice. My surroundings suddenly grew dark. It wasn't because someone turned off the lights. I simply closed my eyes without being consciously aware of it. I finally realized the voice was coming from inside my head.
That night scenery was really beautiful, wasn't it?
Which scenery?
The one we saw at the Golden Gate. I mean, we ended up going there because you wanted to see the location of your favorite movie. We rented a car for 2 days, and you drove us up to the opposite shore. Don't you remember?
I hear lots of suicides happen on that bridge.
What a nice thing to remember.
Remember it. But I want to hear how you remember it.
Okay.
Sachiko began telling me about our trip. Which tourist spots we visited after landing at the airport. How we spent time at the hotel. Sachiko told me everything right down to the smallest detail. Listening to her speak, I started feeling like going on another trip together.
Want to go there again?
Where?
Wherever. You can decide this time.
Yeah. Okay. I'll think about it.
I felt the warmth of Sachiko's right hand in my left. Her slender fingers with its beautiful nails intertwined in mine.
You decided yet?
I asked.
I'd like to go on a cruise. I want something where I wouldn't need to move a lot and could take my time reading books.
She added.
Prefer something with a bit of physical exercise, personally.
We can do that after you get better.
Hey, I'm fine. Think I've been getting a lot better lately.
Sachiko's features clouded over.
You really think so? I'd better ask the doctor then.
Sachiko pulled out a doll from the drawer and showed it to me.
Oh,
I love it.
We finally get, and this is the first time we get a good, direct, like full-size view of the doll, right? We've usually seen it from behind, like a little bits here and there in scenes, like really small.
Yeah.
And this is like, hey, in case you haven't figured out what's going on, here's Narasaki.
It wore a white lab coat. Sachiko raised one of the doll's hands and said, "Hi there. It's been a while."
I remember it now. We played with this back in kindergarten, right?
You must have seen it at least 100 times in my room. I found it the other day when I was looking for our graduation album.
That's so nostalgic.
"Tell me about it," the doll said, raising its hands.
Hey, if you're a doctor, could you do a checkup on me?
"Let's see." The doll's little hand pressed against my forehead.
Speaking of which, where did your stethoscope go?
I lost it somewhere. Well, it's not like I can't determine your condition just by looking at you.
Well, that's quite the skill to have.
You have a fever. Does your head hurt?
Just a little.
It seems you need more rest. You should sleep for tonight. You think you can manage that?
I'm not feeling that bad. I can sleep just fine.
I'll be here by your side, so relax and close your eyes.
That's good to hear.
I returned to the darkness as the voices in my memories drew further away. I kept my eyes closed, waiting for the next voice. I didn't hear anything for a while, but I couldn't force myself to move. It was entirely possible that the moment I opened my eyes, I would no longer be in that cold room. Remnants of Sachiko's presence still lingered about, along with something of tremendous importance. As such, I remained still in the darkness. After waiting for a while, I started feeling like I was already hearing it. I could hear it, but my brain refused to comprehend or even process it. I continued to wait. After some more time, I lost sense of how long I'd been doing this. I found myself assaulted by drowsiness, trying to interfere with my mission. When I pulled my consciousness away to escape it, I heard the voice again.
Why not go to sleep already?
I'll forget a lot of things if I fall asleep now.
You'll forget a lot anyway.
I felt Sachiko's hand on my cheek as I made a sulking face.
I wonder what happens when people die.
No idea. That's up to God, I suppose.
I don't really believe in one, though. I'd rather you decided it for me.
Sachiko fell in thought.
They say people remain in the hearts of their loved ones, and I agree. When I think about what you'd think, you appear inside my head. I'll keep thinking about you even when you're no more, so you'll still be here, inside me.
What kind of place would that be?
A great place. You'll live in a port town, by a beautiful sea. It's quiet enough, the air tastes nice, and every season is perfect for reading.
Am I gonna move there?
Yes. There's only nice people living there, so they'll treat you well.
It sounds kind of like Wonderland.
I suppose you could call it that.
Sounds nice. Tell me more.
So are we back on Takako actually died theory, and this is inside Sachiko's mind palace?
The thing that keeps me from going that direction is that it's Lily we see that's taking the trips.
Yeah, it sure looks like
Sachiko.
Lily.
Not Sachiko.
Yeah.
Sachiko is the one who doesn't seem to be real.
I am very puzzled.
I turned in the direction of Sachiko's voice and opened my eyes. However, her face was all blurry in the dim light and I couldn't make it out.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I heard her voice. When I opened my eyes, I was in Kozue's room. I was standing in front of a bed without a canopy. Tears rolled down my cheeks. My last memory was of that regret. Sachiko was the one most in pain, and yet I ended up relying on her again. And she took that heavy load on her shoulders for me with a gentle smile. Patches of orange sunlight illuminated my knees. The cold had abated as if it was never there to begin with. The pain and sickness I felt were completely gone, too. I looked at my shadow on the bed, and felt a sharp pain behind my eyes. That scene from earlier kept flashing into my mind. I had a recollection of the bed Sachiko and I lay on. And I'd already remembered the clock before even seeing it. That was, without a shred of doubt, our bedroom. We bought an apartment in the suburbs. It was a 30-minute drive away from our office. The memories of the days we spent together came flooding back into my mind like water crashing through a collapsing dam. That was way too much information for a mere dream. Besides, there was nothing ambiguous about those memories. I remembered everything with perfect clarity. My heart was racing in my chest. I gave up on processing everything for now and took a deep breath. As I looked around the room, I remembered the sanatorium. My thoughts moved then on to Mayuko, Sana, and Kozue, and finally to Narasaki. Sachiko mentioned that my name in my returning memories. Narasaki knew Sachiko, and it was possible she was still here. Once I had calmed down, I hurried out of the room. I descended the spiral staircase in a hurry. As I emerged in the lobby, I nearly crashed into Narasaki, who was standing in front of the phone. Narasaki noticed me and turned around. Did you run into a polar bear upstairs or something? Her hand was resting on the phone's receiver.
Have you finished your walk yet?
I was about to leave.
I want to ask you something about what we discussed earlier. Or can't you even spare a minute?
Narasaki glanced at the stained glass on the door rather than the clock. I can stay while it's still bright outside. I'd rather not drive through the mountain roads in the dark, you know. What's bothering you?
Sachiko. You implied you didn't know her, but you do, don't you?
And what makes you think that? Narasaki shrugged.
I remembered. Narasaki is the name of the doll Sachiko used to play with. And you look a lot like her, too. And the same Narasaki sent Sachiko's diary to me. You cannot be unrelated. It wouldn't make sense.
Narasaki slowly inhaled a breath and then looked at the floor, I couldn't quite make out her face in the already dimly lit lobby. Her expression seemingly teetered between relief and exasperation, but I couldn't be sure. You are correct. I do know her.
Why did you act like you didn't?
I wanted you to remember it by yourself.
Still could have said something.
Narasaki shook her head. There would have been no point if you couldn't remember her by yourself. If anything I said had caused you to remember something, it would have ended up distorted by my subjective point of view. It wouldn't be your genuine memory. And these kinds of uncertain things are at first to be taken away by your illness. Your Sachiko and my Sachiko are different. In order to remember your own Sachiko, you had to recall your memories by yourself. That is why I avoided saying anything about her. All I could do was unobtrusively guide you toward the key to your memories. I understood what she was trying to say. Even back when I read that diary, there were times when I wasn't entirely sure if those were really my memories or just my imagination. And when I started thinking like that, I'd grow anxious and uncertain. Once you forget something for good, you cannot be sure about it anymore.
Thanks to you, I remembered something very important. However, some of the stuff I remembered is pretty crazy, which is why I'm stumped right now.
Narasaki spoke up while I was trying to look for a better way to articulate my thoughts. What did you remember exactly?
I'm pretty sure I now remember more or less everything about our life together. But memories don't explain why I'm here. It's almost like I have two different selves, each with its own separate set of memories. I feel like the time I spent living with Sachiko is akin to a dream that almost felt real.
Narasaki calmly listened to my rambling.
Maybe you didn't really know her. For all I know, she could just be a figment of my imagination.
Finding it hard to believe? Narasaki asked. But if you'd remember that much, we can always talk about it later. Narasaki turned back toward the phone. She picked up the receiver and pushed a coin into the slot. Maybe she's still there, she said while turning the dial. I drew closer to the phone. Narasaki held up the receiver in front of me. When I took it and pressed it against my ear, I could hear a long beep. What on earth? I was expecting to have a better idea of what the picture was at this point, but I'm still floundering.
I feel like we have a lot of the... Whoa! I feel like we have a lot of the broad stroke stuff, but not the way it fits together into a satisfying answer.
Exactly. Last chapter. Okay, I see you, game.
I finished my conversation with Narasaki and sat down on the stool by the phone to catch my breath. After a couple of minutes, I stood up and was about to head to the spiral staircase when my phone started ringing again. The phone started ringing again. I thought it was either Narasaki, having forgotten to tell me something, or some actual hotel business this time. After a few moments of hesitation, I picked up the receiver. Hello?
Hello?
It wasn't Narasaki's voice that reached me from the other end of the line. It was an even more familiar one, a voice I had listened to for most of my life. Takako?
Showing her as the reflection.
It's been a while, Sachi.
The abruptness of her call rendered my mind completely blank. It was most likely another one of my hallucinations, but there was something different about this one. Up until now, my head would always cloud over whenever Takako appeared, making me go through the motions as though in a lucid dream. This time, however, I felt no different from usual. My mind was as serene as a lake. I could hear her voice clearly through the receiver. Where are you calling me from?
A sanatorium.
A sanatorium?
Yeah, I've kind of been having trouble remembering things lately.
I always knew you were just one step away from dementia.
Maybe I was.
Huh? Are you serious? I heard Takako chuckle on the other end of the line. Well, it's not like forgetting things is anything new to you. Remember the time you mixed up your shoes back in school?
I do. I accidentally put on my friend's shoes after class in the AV room.
That's still within the scope of reason, but after that, you forgot to change them before leaving school, and only realized what you were wearing when you got home.
Yeah, probably changed the sandals and went outside to hang out with you, but my sister panicked when she got home and found unfamiliar shoes with someone else's name in the lobby, and the neighbors called the police. I was in for a shock when I got home and I found the police car in front of our place. I had to explain the situation, and then the policeman who was checking my room for signs of burglary gave me such an exasperated look. There's no way I'll forget it until I die.
Your memory was pretty bad, even back in those days. That old episode made a smile naturally form on my lips.
Not entirely right. When I was younger, I would just easily get obsessed with one thing or the other and kind of forget about everything else.
That was true, but it didn't change the fact she was among the most forgetful people I'd met in my life. That said, there was little point in pursuing the subject any further at this point. A sanatorium sounds so not like you. Aren't you bored there?
I'm not. If anything, this place is unlike any other. I'm free to do almost anything I want, so I'm actually having loads of fun here.
And how do you feel?
Not bad.
I see. We both fell silent for a moment. I realized I kept asking questions without giving Takako the chance to speak up. So this time, I paused and waited for Takako. I heard her voice again just before the silence could grow awkward.
I was forgetful. I admit that, but that's why you were always such a lifesaver for me. Diligently remembered things in my stead.
My lips unconsciously formed into a smile again. Well, as long as you understand.
Where are you now, Sachi?
I'm staying at a friend's mansion to recuperate.
Recuperate? Oh. Are you also sick?
I contemplated explaining everything that had happened to me thus far. However, I couldn't find the right words. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. It would have taken a long time to explain, and I wanted to speak to her about other things.
Oh, I see.
She said.
How are you doing lately?
She added after a pause. I've wanted to talk to you for the longest time.
Me too. I wanted to see you.
We then talked about our past. About the trips we took together, the island in the far south, the countries in the west, our experiences on a long bridge. We discussed everything, from our days in the kindergarten to when we quit our jobs and went independent. There were a few details I forgot, but Takako filled in the blanks for me, and I did the same for her. I closed my eyes and gazed at the lucid memories on the back of my eyelids. Those days came back to me and were now about to disappear again. After we finished talking about the time we snuck into a pool at night, Takako said that her coins were about to run out. She was on her last one. I slowly opened my eyes. Those were happy days.
Not were. We still have plenty more ahead of us.
I heard Takako whisper my name under her breath before falling silent. I whispered her name too. I suppose this is goodbye.
Yeah. Goodbye, Sachi.
I listened to the beeping sound for a while. I placed the receiver back into its place with a loud clang. I listened to the sound of our printer working quietly in the background. Suddenly, it let out an electronic beep before stopping completely motionless.
Oh no, it stopped.
Fumi said in front of the machine.
Inukai, this thing swallowed my papers again.
Fumi turned to Inukai, who was still working at his desk. He silently stood up, walked over to the printer, and kneeled down in front of it to open its tray.
I thought it was a steal when we got it from the neighboring office for almost nothing, but it just keeps getting stuck all the time.
Oh, shit. Well, just keeps getting stuck all the time, you know?
Well, to be honest, you should really know how to fix this by yourself.
Inukai removed the cover from the back of the machine and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. He pushed a button, and the calm printing noise resumed.
I don't want to get my hands dirty, that's all.
Inukai glanced at his fingers, now covered in cyan-colored dye.
What?
Frowning, he pulled out a handkerchief from his back pocket and began wiping off his fingers. The handkerchief had a picture of a cute sheep on it.
You can't do that much, can't you? Still beats going next door to beg every time you need to print something.
Ugh, Jesus, okay, fine. God.
There was a knock on the door as Inukai returned to his seat. The windows of our beige-colored door trembled in response to the knock.
Yes?
Fumi moved closer to see what was going on. I paused and shifted my gaze to the door.
I'm sorry for the intrusion, but I was wondering if this means I was start the present.
Fumi was speaking to someone on the other side of the door.
Yeah, just give me a moment.
I made out a long-haired, familiar-looking woman standing at the door. Nanai, a massive Boston bag at her feet, waved at me as our eyes met.
Oh, hello. Hey there, I came over to hang out. I came over to hang out? And showed up at the office?
What? What?
Oh no.
What?
Are we somehow wrong about the POV about Lily and Takako? Did we somehow misread that? I don't think we did.
I don't know.
I think that what are we missing about that? Takako put down the receiver and watched the phone in silence for a while before turning around to face me.
She sounded like she was doing even better than I thought.
She said with a broad smile. The light from the stained glass window had moved deeper into the room. After a few moments of silence, Takako parted her lips again.
Last time I saw her was when we were in bed together. Got no recollection of waking up the next morning. Is this all a dream? Or is it the world after death?
I remember that night very well. Takako suffered from a very complicated disease and spent months in a hospital bed. But after it became clear that nothing could be done to cure her, Sachiko had brought her back home. Takako passed away about a month after that. Sachiko nursed Takako during the entire time. As her condition grew worse, she kept thrashing in her bed at night. Every time that happened, Sachiko would administer her the sedative she got at the hospital to make her sleep. The pain in her fever rarely allowed Takako to remain conscious, but during her brief moments of awareness, she'd always say Sachiko's name, and Sachiko would always answer her. 2 days before her death, Takako regained consciousness for slightly longer than usual, and spent a brief time talking with Sachiko. They went over random episodes ranging from their childhood to their adult life, the fun they had together, what they felt and thought at the time. They discussed every single thing with no reservations down to the tiniest detail. Once they finished, Takako gave Sachiko a long, passionate hug, and she said goodbye. At this point, that episode remained only in my memories. I guess you can think of it like that, but it doesn't really matter. Whether this is a dream or anything else, you exist here all the same. And that was of the utmost importance to Sachiko. I stuck my hands into my coat pockets. The lobby had grown chilly as the sun began to set. Doesn't look like I've got much time. Is there anything else you want to know?
I mean, of course, there's a whole lot of things I don't understand.
There's a thing or two I still don't understand myself, but I guess I can share with you what I do know.
If I could speak with Sachiko, would I also meet her somehow?
Your memories have returned. You should know what happened.
How come I could speak to her through the phone?
That was a special occasion. There is a way to connect both worlds, but it's not good for Sachiko herself. Normal people don't talk to voices in their head. I'd say it's about time to put an end to it. Takako said nothing as she shifted her gaze toward the ceiling.
Then tell me about yourself. You sent me Sachiko's diary and explained how my illness worked, so I assume it was no coincidence you handed me those keys either. What exactly are you trying to accomplish?
That wasn't a bad question. My objective was to recover Takako's memories. In other words, to combine the scattered and chaotic remnants of Sachiko's memories of Takako into one continuous fold.
Okay, so we're getting the explanation here, and we were then wrong. So we were right originally when we were like, these are the same person, but it's Sachiko.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't quite right with the she's actually far enough gone to see all these things as real,
Gotcha.
but had these things going on in her mind in the place after death she promised Takako.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think.
All right. I'm cool. I'm cool with this. I wouldn't have handed Takako the keys if the diary was the only thing that kept her memories together. And I couldn't have been sure she would be able to return from that cave, much less with her memories recovered once I did. But she ended up living up to my expectations and beyond. It was all to treat the memory illness.
But why would you go that far to do it?
Why would you go so far even so as to do
Why would you
want to
go
do
so
look
far
more
even-
like?
So as to look more like
Because that's my role. Takako dropped her shoulders with a puzzled look on her face. I glanced at the clock while she was thinking about her next question. The old man I met at the cafe the other day said it would rain tonight. He said he could tell it from how the clouds moved above the sea. I tried checking the sky afterwards myself, but it didn't make much sense to me. I guided Takako down to the main subject. Do you think you could do a favor for me? Takako returned her gaze to me.
I mean, of course. You have no idea how grateful I am for everything you've done today.
I'm glad to hear that. I want you to write your diary in the notebook I sent you if possible.
I'm already writing it in my own notebook.
Takako said with a puzzled expression. I want the diary in Sachiko's notebook to be a little different. It should be a special diary, I suppose. I'd like you to write about things from a broader perspective, not just things that pertain to you personally.
Could you be more specific?
When there are special events at the sanatorium, imagine you'll all be going to visit the shrines at the start of the year. I'd like you to make a record of what the other people there have said or done. It should be something fun, if possible. You don't need to write in the diary every day.
How often do you want me to write then?
A couple of times a year would be just fine.
That sounds easy. What's the point of it, though?
It'll help to block the memory illness from advancing.
Is the diary I'm writing now not good enough for that?
Unfortunately, it's not perfect, and you'll still end up forgetting things here and there.
Oh, you said I should take good care of that notebook when we spoke in the night duty room. Is it, like, special in some way?
That notebook is an embodiment of memories.
What do you mean?
I mean it literally. Your notebook, as well as the ones belonging to the other patients in here, all have the same function. That's why they're so important.
Oh, there were a few pages torn out from the notebook. Do you know why?
I shrugged. Takako slightly cocked her head to the side.
Why would anyone tear up something that important?
She asked. I stood up from the stool and straightened my jacket.
Are you already going? Why don't you spend the night here? We have more than enough empty rooms.
I have a hotel room booked. Besides, there's something I still must do.
I see.
Takako followed me up to my car. She kept her arms crossed, seemingly deep in thought. She finally spoke up when I opened the car's door.
Narasaki?
What is it?
You said our notebooks are essentially our memories, right? So what about the one that you sent?
Who knows?
It's not yours, is it?
You have an active imagination. And then again, that's hardly surprising in your line of work. I climbed into the car and leaned back in the seat.
Will you come visit some other time? There's still a lot of things I'd like to ask you.
I'll make sure to drop by if I get the chance, I said, before closing the door. I fastened my seatbelt and ignited the engine. Takako followed my car up to the road beyond the sanatorium gate. She kept waving at me up until she disappeared from the rear view mirror. I checked in right before lockup time and crashed into bed as soon as I entered my room. I ended up sleeping until noon the next day. I woke up at one point at my usual time and thought about going to get breakfast, but ended up changing my mind and instead fell back to sleep. I had nothing to do in the morning anyway. After all, I had already finished most of my work. When I opened my eyes, it was already past noon. I slowly climbed out of bed, got dressed, and left the hotel. I spotted a restaurant designed like a ship as I made my way through the shopping district. I decided to drop in and have lunch there. I killed some time by reading the newspaper and listening to the radio. A young man in a suit and a middle-aged man wearing a knit cap entered the restaurant during that period. The young man finished the lunch he ordered and promptly left the restaurant. As for the man wearing the knit cap, he spent the afternoon reading a newspaper, leaving only when the sun began to set. When I was the only customer left, I spent some time having small talk with the waiter. After hearing the same story about the fishing grounds I'd heard from Takako the previous day, I finally left the restaurant myself, pocketing a box of matches that they were handing out as an advertisement on my way out. I continued in the direction of the sea. As I walked along the breakwater, I spotted some stairs leading down to the beach. A bit of sand found its way into my shoes as I got down, but I didn't mind. I spotted something shining in the sand. Picking it up, I realized it was the sea glass Takako showed me earlier. I looked around to find some of the other beads, green and blue, scattered all across the beach. Some of them had yet to have their edges fully chipped away by the sea. I picked one bead up and held it against the sun. It lit up in red. Felt like it'd be a waste to throw it away, so I slid it into my pocket. I walked along the beach until I reached the driftwood I'd previously only seen in the far distance when I began my journey. I glanced back at the town. The steps I took to the beach now looked tiny in the distance. I spent some time looking at the mountain, but I couldn't find the sanatorium. I lowered myself onto the driftwood and watched the orange sunset for a while, giving my exhausted legs some time to rest. I prodded the sand with my heels, absent-mindedly digging a hole underneath myself. I pulled out a file from my bag and removed a couple of papers from it. It was the medical record I had pocketed at the consultation room, along with a few pages that were torn from the notebook Takako mentioned. I removed the pages from the medical record with a paper cutting knife I had found at the hotel. I ran my eyes all over them one last time. The first page had a date written in a child's hand. Though it looked like a diary, the notebook went into detail about an illness and its treatment. It was the record of the first time I played doctor with Sachiko back in kindergarten. Below the text, there was a crayon picture of Narasaki investigating Takako's belly. Looking at it always made me remember the good old days. I couldn't help but smile. I pulled out a matchbox from my pocket and lit up a match. The flame was quickly extinguished by the wind, but I managed to successfully light another one. I guided the little flame to the page. It spread against the white surface, burning the words and the picture. When it became too hot to hold, I let it fall into the hole I dug earlier. I burned one page after another. When I had only 2 pages left, I realized my hand had gotten transparent. It looked exactly like what had happened to my friends at the clinic. The orange light of the sun illuminated me like it did the sea glass mere moments before. I looked at my old friends and the picture Takako had said was empty. Whereas she asked me what I was trying to do as I burned the last page. The only thing written on it was the phrase, "I am sorry." It was the last thing Sachiko said to Takako, as well as one of the parts of her that I erased. I crossed my arms and watched the remnants of the page burn inside the hole. And when everything turned to ash, I could feel myself getting lighter. I wasn't sure if it was my body or my mind, but it didn't feel as bad as I thought it would. After confirming that every page was burned beyond recognition, I threw the rest of the files into my bag and the campfire I made on the sand. I watched as the flames swallowed all the documents and the pictures attached to them. I stuck my hands in my pockets to realize I had sea glass in both of them. I took them out and compared the one I got from Takako to the one I had found. The thing sparkled in red, yellow, and blue, illuminating the sand below them. As the fire continued to soundlessly burn, I began to feel slightly lightheaded, almost as if I was somewhat tipsy. As an experiment, I tried remembering something from the old from the clinic. There was the little Sachiko, a rabbit, and a bear in the room. Sachiko was drawing a picture of everyone. Back in those days, Takako often came over to play as well. Although I could remember the rabbit and the bear, their names eluded me. That made me feel a bit sad. So I lay down on the driftwood in case I might end up losing consciousness. As if to follow the course of the setting sun, I sluggishly began closing my eyelids and tried thinking about something pleasant. After a while, I lost the sensation of my body. Hibiki. A voice reverberated in my head like a bubble rising from the ocean.
I can't sleep.
I heard the sound of rustling clothes along with the young Sachiko's voice. You'll fall asleep sooner or later if you keep your eyes closed.
It's boring to stay still.
Just pretend that you're fishing.
I've never fished in my life.
Try imagining that you're floating in the middle of the sea under the moonlight.
How far is that from land?
Very far. But you won't sink, so you have nothing to worry about.
And what then?
I floated in the middle of the ocean, swaying in the waves like a fishing rod's string as you watched the night sky. The sky above was without clouds, allowing a clear view of the moon and the stars. The calm water reflected the stars, making me feel almost like I was floating in outer space.
What then?
And then you can watch the stars.
Huh? That's it?
If I do that for long enough, a large fish will eventually rise from the depths and swim my back over and over again. Then she'll open her big mouth and swallow me whole.
Hmm.
And at that point, you'll already be asleep. After a few moments, the characteristically rhythmic breathing of an undisturbed sleep reached my ears. The calm waves caressed my cheeks as I floated in the darkness. I could already feel the presence of a big fish underneath me. I was then swallowed by the waves. I started to feel cold as I descended into the bottomless void. I could no longer move. I felt neither my eyes nor my fingers. I simply kept sinking deeper and deeper. I was going down to the very bottom.
Hibiki.
I opened my eyes, reacting to that small, high-pitched voice. The dark waves drew away from me. Before I knew it, I was back on the beach again. A small girl ran toward me, seizing my shoulders. She lifted my upper body from the driftwood.
What?
That's young Sachiko, then.
Interesting.
Yep.
I finally found you.
The young Sachiko was looking straight at me. What are you doing here?
I was looking for you. Takako told me everything.
I see. My head hurt a little as I turned my neck,
That's because you slept in a weird place like this.
said Sachiko upon noticing me wince. Sachiko took my hand as I stood up and brushed the sand off my hair and clothes.
It'll be dark soon. We've got to hurry.
She said. I shook my still drowsy head and looked at her. She pulled me forward. I suppose. Let us go.
What kind of patient did you cure this time?
I'll tell you once we get back to the clinic. We should grab something to eat on our way back.
That sounds good. I'd like some crepes.
Are you okay with the usual stand by the station?
Of course.
Let us go then.
Yes. Huh.
What? I'm having so many emotions, and yet I can't get everything to fit together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is everybody. So I think we got taken down a blind alley by the fact that the person who was Sachiko in the reflection looked like Lily. I think it was meant to be the other way around, maybe.
No, it wasn't that. What did it was that it was Lily who showed up in the tips, remembering Takako on her trip.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I was thinking. So perhaps it was the other way around, like what we just saw with Kozue and young Sachiko.
I see.
That Kozue was just an altered version of how young Sachiko in fact looked. That maybe Lily, as we saw her, is not actually a person and was just this altered version of
Sachiko's.
But I don't know how that makes sense. What with Lily being
Yeah,
related to Nanai and Nanai apparently being here, and I still haven't put it all together.
I'm not bothering you, am I? Tell me if I am and I'll go straight to my hotel right away.
Nanai fixed her slightly disheveled hair with one hand as she sat on the sofa in the reception room. Fumi brought a tray with tea and snacks and began lining them up on the table.
Ah,
She made a friendly smile when Nanai greeted her, then returned to the office. I suddenly realized that the way she sounds even reminds me of sheep.
ah, ah.
I told you to stop doing that, Fumi. It's disconcerting. Was that Miss Fumi?
She cast a wary look at the door through which Fumi left. I nodded. I said I had time on weekends, but I didn't expect you to come so early.
Your office was next to the station, so I figured I'd drop by on my way to the hotel. I wanted to see where you work.
I would have come to meet you if you had told me.
I already feel plenty awkward bothering you here at work. This is a monaka, isn't it? And with rice cake, too. I love these things.
Nanai tore the wrapping off of one of the snacks Fumi brought and began happily chewing on it. As she finished one, she began opening another. Her eyes wandered to a poster on the wall opposite of her.
Did you draw that?
Yes, the other one was done by one of my coworkers, though.
Are those your posters as well? May I have a look?
She pointed at a rolled-up poster lying on the cabinet. If you want to.
Some of these are pretty darn cool. I really like this one right here.
She showed me a blue poster with dolphins and coral reefs in the background.
How long does it take to make one?
About a week.
I see. Your job sounds kind of hard.
I can't deny that, but I like it.
But since I was little, I've never been good at art. I like to draw, but it all looked like crap. So it feels kind of overwhelming to meet a person who can actually create something with actual worth.
Only a handful of things are really worth anything, though.
Is that true? For example?
I'm not sure. But in my case, only the time I spent with her remains forever ingrained in my mind. It fills me with strength, no matter how tough things get. It helped me find the correct path in my life, so next time I'd want to convey those feelings and be the one to support someone else.
I see.
Nanai pulled a few pamphlets from her bag. Many of them had scenic pictures, the kind you'd usually see at tourism agencies.
I'd never really been here before, so, do you think you could show me around a bit over the weekend?
I picked up one of the pamphlets and briefly inspected it. I doubt you'll have time for everything listed in here.
What would you recommend then?
How about this?
Mixed in with all the pamphlets. Oh,
Describing local areas, there was one with overseas destinations.
I'm going overseas again next week to pick up some new furniture.
A cruise along the Mediterranean Sea? How long of a trip are we talking about?
Take about a month or so, I'd say.
And what about with your inn?
It's not like we get many guests anyway. Auntie can handle it by herself.
If I find an interesting postcard, I'll make sure to send it to you.
I prefer something with beautiful scenery. I was just thinking about changing the postcards I have framed above my sink.
The ship behind me sounded as a horn as I shook Sanai's hand.
I'll see you sometime later, I guess.
The clerk responsible for the gates urged me to board.
I'm sorry.
May you have a good trip.
I entered in my ticket and ascended to the deck.
It's a shame Kozue didn't come to see us off.
I turned to Mayuko, who stood by me on the ship.
Well, it's not like we're going to be away for that long.
I suppose so.
We walked along the deck, watching the receding port town.
Is that our sanatorium?
I honestly doubt you can see it from here.
No, that's definitely it. Look, there's a red building over there.
I can't see anything.
Pretty sure it's there. I should contact the others the night we come back and tell them to turn on all the lights. That way we'll be able to judge whether or not it's really there, I'm sure.
I really doubt Kozue would want to do all that for a stupid thing like this.
I guess so.
Still, this whole business about the trip came out of nowhere from you.
Said Mayuko, holding down her hair.
You made a promise, didn't we?
What promise?
A fierce wind blew across the deck, drowning out our voices.
Don't think this will be the last place I take you to.
I almost cannot wait.
Almost.
Were we just really overthinking it for that entire last bit there? I think we went by like the right answer.
I think we
cruised past it, and then
Yeah, I think we got the correct answer and cruised past it to something that was a little more elaborate.
yeah.
But I think we did get the correct answer when we realized all of these are in the same person's minds, and
I think it was really just that one tips thing that threw me off.
yeah. That was the one.
Without that, I think it would have. Still, what a fucking game! This is it's strange. I can see why it has a mixed reputation now, because it definitely doesn't do anything to hold your hand. You know what I mean? It tells you what the situation with Takako and Sachiko was at the very end, but that's it.
Mhm.
It makes you work for everything else. And it's also really sad.
But also, it had a hopeful end.
Yeah, it did.
It had a hopeful end, and that was what I felt like it was going to do. So I feel vindicated that
It still feels
That it
weird
did.
having Sachiko and Nanai create that relationship at the very end. But I get it. I like Narasaki.
Yeah.
She's cool. I like her. She's my favorite. Definitely not roasted. I feel like this is another one that would benefit from another go around.
Perhaps.
Yeah, because I feel so. It's like it's. Yeah, you frustrating lady, you caused us so many problems just because of that one fucking CG.
But also a bunch of things that she said that were exact parallels with things from Takako and Sachiko's stories.
Maybe Lily is her as she gets older.
Huh.
The tip section for that one did say second trip. Maybe that's in the future after she's
Huh.
kind of accepted that part and Takako is and moved on.
I don't know. I'm gonna
Hello
have
there,
to.
Sanai.
What?
I said hello there, Sanai.
I'm gonna have to read other people's explanations.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
piece together something that fills in the gaps for me.
Yeah, like emotionally, I feel like we hit a great resolution here, but my brain is still like I. And it wasn't for lack of trying either. Like we were giving this our level best the entire time,
Yeah.
and I think we got some of it. But damn, it really threw us for a loop here. I had a good time with it though,
Yeah.
playing this nice normal Yuri game where nothing weird happens. I think we should play more normal Yuri games where nothing weird happens.
Definitely.
I hope you all enjoyed it too. I feel like this is going to be one more that I'll appreciate more as I look up more about it afterwards here.
Mm.
And I encourage you to do so as well because like well the
More tips.
two more. Okay, there are two more tips. Extra CGs have been added to the library, huh? Okay.
Well, we got to do some
Well,
tips.
I guess I did all that wind up for nothing. Let's go do some extra tips, huh? Extra CGs were added too.
Yeah. I wonder what.
I do love me some extra CGs. Hello. Tips. Just the tips.
What do we got? Inverse C, a holiday at the sanatorium. What was the
Yeah.
other one?
That is it.
Oh, I thought it said there were two.
It said Inverse C, a holiday at the sanatorium.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it unlocked tips 4, and then the scene.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought it was 2 as well, but it's just this one.
What?
I switched the tongs to my left hand and brushed the sweat off my forehead with my right. The vast blue sea extended under the blue sky as far as the eye could see. I could feel the fierce sunlight and the heat of the reddening charcoal against my skin.
Beach episode, everyone!
What happens after you die? A beach episode.
Is it working?
Mayuko took a peek inside the grill.
The charcoal's fine. Oh,
The charcoal's finally starting to glow.
I said as I continued to fan the thing.
do you want to try cooking something?
Mayuko picked up one of the boiled corns we brought with us.
I think we need more charcoal. Last time I tried this, it went out right away.
Is it really the charcoal that's to blame, though? Sanai's grill is working just fine.
Sanai decided to be our chef for the day and started cooking rice at the canteen.
Seriously?
I turned around, my eyes meeting Sanai's.
Is something wrong?
Using the same charcoal as me, right?
I think so. I took it from there.
She pointed at the charcoal bag by the cooler box.
Really is the same one. Maybe the top got moist or something.
Narasaki did the charcoal part for me, so maybe she knows how it works.
Is it weird that my beach party is with 3 different Sachikos and then Sachiko's doll?
That really sounds like the ideal beach party.
Yeah, fair enough.
When I returned to our bags to get some fresh charcoal and fire starter, Narasaki and Kozue passed by me.
Really,
Reformers
the only
pulling the ladder.
problem is that there aren't enough Takakos to go around.
Oh no, don't worry. I planted some more in the next patch over.
Oh, okay.
Aya! Aya! Aya!
The former was pulling the ladder by the hand. Where are you taking me, small child?
Seems like it's going to take more time, so let's go for a quick swim in the meantime.
I glanced over my shoulder and saw the table we asked Kozue to handle had already been neatly set. The cups on the table even had our names on them.
You can go if you want, but it'd be nice if you could prepare the kebabs while I try to figure out how to get the fire started.
I took out a skewer from the cooling box and showed it to them.
Meat and vegetables are with Mayuko.
Okay, fine.
Said Kozue, taking the skewer from me. I asked Narasaki to help me with the grill. When Narasaki rearranged the charcoal, it lit up in seconds.
I see, so it's better to stack them vertically.
Heat always rises up, so it's best to arrange the charcoal in a way that makes it easiest for it to travel. If you do it well enough, you don't even need to fan it.
You're pretty knowledgeable about this kind of stuff.
I read about it in some book once. I light up the charcoal so I could better control the flame, then put a wire gauze on the grill and tried grilling one piece of meat. I could hear it sizzle.
Oh!
I let out an excited shout. I glanced at Mayuko and Kozue preparing the kebabs.
Grill's ready.
Mayuko nodded. She and Kozue then brought over the skewers. Sanae approached us as well, eager to watch.
Let's start cooking then. Oh, hey, wait a second.
While I was contemplating how best to order the skewers on the grill to get them evenly roasted, Kozue began grilling her kebab by herself.
What do you want?
Just so you know, there's an unwritten rule in these parts that seniors get the first bite while the youngsters wait for their turn. So... Hey, you even listening to me?
Kozue put another kebab on the grill while I was talking.
I prepared one for everyone. This one's for Mayuko, those are Narasaki's and Sanai's, and this one's yours.
Isn't... Oh. I prepared one for everyone. This one's Mayuko's, and those are Narasaki's and Sanai's. This one is yours.
By the time she finished, 5 kebabs had already been placed on the grill. They all had bite-sized pieces of sweet pepper, shiitake mushrooms, onions, chicken, and paprika skewered on them. Man, 3/4 of that sounds delicious. They all seemed to follow the same order, looking pretty colorful and nice. Now we're talking, Narasaki exclaimed. Kozue's kebab, still on the wire gauze, looked and sounded amazing.
Am I imagining this, or is there almost no meat on my kebab compared to the others?
I put the same amount on all of them.
Did you season them?
Yeah. Yes, with salt and pepper.
Said Mayuko. Narasaki asked what everyone wanted to drink, then moved to the table and filled all our cups before bringing them back to us. After confirming it was cooked just right, I picked up my kebab. I gave everyone an eye signal and raised a toast. Bought these kebabs purely on a whim during a shopping trip, but turned out to be a good decision. They tasted very good. Finishing my first one, I started putting one ingredient after another on my skewer, pretty much randomly, eating as much as I could. The cheese fondue Mayuko made was also delicious. Out of nowhere, she placed some camembert cheese on it in aluminum foil and melted it above the grill. Figured it was safe to call my first barbecue party in a long while a resounding success.
Meat's done.
I'd long since lost count of how many plates I'd sent to the others. When I was about to offer Mayuko another plate, she refused, claiming she'd already eaten more than enough. The plate in Sanae's hand still looked almost completely packed with food. Kozue refused to eat anything else after filling herself with cheese fondue, and was already on her way to the beach with Narasaki for another swim. Must have taken a liking to being pulled around on her floating ring. I played with her too, but ended up pulling her too far from the shore, and we got swept away by a huge wave. Getting back to shore was quite the adventure, which you can read about in The Adventures of Takako, Volume 7. In stores soon. After that, she never let me near her floating ring ever again.
Well, I guess I'll just eat the rest all on my own then.
I moved the onions and the chicken onto my own blade.
More for Takako. More for Takako.
Aw, beach episode!
Beach episode.
Everyone, let's end with a beach episode.
What?
There's another one?
What?
All right.
There's more at the end of the game than one might figure.
Don't worry about it. This all seems like it's just kind of like post-game, like feel-good wrap-up stuff, so I wouldn't think too hard about the end here.
Yep.
I ate too much.
I got a little carried away this time. The feeling of bitter regret made me remember the few times I visited an all-you-can-eat restaurant. I seriously overestimated my poor stomach's capacity.
Are you okay?
Mayuko brought me a drink.
Nah, Buster Wolf. I'm feeling a bit better.
I took a sip from the water bottle she handed to me. I was really feeling better now, just like I'd said. Still, it didn't seem like I'd be able to do any swimming today.
Where are all the others?
At the beach, playing.
I glanced toward the shoal in the distance and could make out 3 figures playing volleyball at the beach, with what looked like my ball.
Well, they seem to be having fun at least.
Mayuko smiled.
Too bad you can't join them, huh?
I'm just glad they get to enjoy this at least.
Coming to the sea this year was a good idea.
I nodded in agreement.
These trips are great, but sometimes the coolest places can be found right under your nose. I'm talking about your face.
Spent a few minutes gazing at the sea with Mayuko, then slowly stood up.
Where are you going?
Just for a walk. I feel like it might help my stomach. Wanna join me?
I'll look after the bags here.
Alright. Anyway, I'll be off then.
I began walking toward the shoreline. The soothing sough of the waves and the pleasantly light breeze made me forget the heaviness in my stomach. It didn't take long to reach the end of the small beach. It was cut off by the protruding cape, forming a small cliff. The shallow reef at its bottom seemed to have continued all the way to the opposite shore. I looked behind me, but Mayuko and the others were too far away for me to make out. Overtaken by sudden adventurous impulse, I climbed down the little cliff and continued down the shallow reef toward the other side. My path grew wider the further I went. As I closed in on the cape, the waves beating against it splashed against my face. I gazed at the sea from that position. There was not a single soul in sight. I braced myself for another splash in the face, but no other big wave seemed to be coming. The only thing caressing my cheeks was the calm sea breeze. Suddenly, I felt like I spotted someone on the other side of the cape. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the person in question.
Yup.
A moment later, the person had already vanished. I blinked a few times. It must have been my eyes playing tricks on me. After spending some more time gazing at the beautiful scenery, I decided to make my way back to the others. Sachiko would, eventually, come here. And when she did, I had to be ready. After all, she did all this for me. Aww. That actually makes me feel a little bit better. that. Aww. I adore this game. I feel like
I really do feel like we could have used a bit more clarity at the end there, but I think some of that was our own fault for misreading that one signal.
Yeah, that's life.
Yeah, that's how it goes. I still hope all of you enjoyed it. This game is on. We played it on Switch, so it's available there. I think it's probably on Steam as well. Definitely give it a try if this feels like if you enjoyed your time here, because I enjoyed this a lot.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what we're doing. I think we got another Yuri game in the pipeline, actually, that's coming up after this, so hopefully you'll enjoy that.
Feeling bold, aren't we?
I'm not wrong.
You're not wrong.
I know what game we're playing next, and it is a Yuri game. Which is that better?
The feeling bold, aren't we? We're playing a homosexual game.
Oh,
on
okay.
on our channel. Wow.
I thought you were raking me over the coals for my non-committal phrasing here, and I'm like,
No.
okay, fine. Jesus.
I happen to know we had multiple options, and all of them were Yuri games.
Not all of them.
Most of them.
There was one that wasn't a Yuri game. I feel like whatever. You know me. We'll see you all next time, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this series. And if you like this one, check out some of the other stuff we did on the channel. You'll probably like our Room and Echo playthrough. Bye, everyone.
Peace.
Smash that like, comment and subscribe.